you're actually trying to make it work at the practical level of how do you get public and private finance to sit together, how do you kind of create a risk mitigation model that draws in the private finance but doesn't allow them to have outrageous returns at the expense of the public money. And just talk a bit about your experience of, whether it's in the agriculture sector or elsewhere, trying to make blended finance work in that.
So, first of all, thank you very much for spearheading the blended finance effort, because the reality is we believe it can be a game changer. I mean, really, that the private equity industry of the 80s and the 90s was multiplied by the existence of leveraged finance. And we believe that, from the perspective of development, blended finance can play the same role. But there's one caveat, which is the blending is of resources and funding that comes from very different cultural backgrounds. And so now, addressing your question, this is kind of what we face on the ground. To give a very practical example, in the business world, if a partner of yours wants to do repeat business with you, that's a sign of endorsement. Sometimes in the development world, if a partner of yours wants to do repeat business with you, that's a sign of cronyism, right? So how do you bridge these kind of cultural gaps? How do you change this mentality of, it's not Wall Street versus development, and effectively end up, producing a system where you don't have leakage, which we believe is what happened in the past. A lot of these funds effectively didn't end up having a multiplier effect. Private capital never really followed, and you kind of have to start over. But also you don't end up in a system with massive subsidies, right? Because then that makes people lazy, and that will in the long term lead to investments that are also not financially sustainable. And I wish I had a simple answer for you, but we've just been compounding the effect of relationships. It sounds very grandiose. It's not. It's basically, helping people understand, especially on the development agency side and the NGOs, what we do, how we can collaborate. At the beginning, when we said that we were a merchant bank and a private equity firm, you could see people sort of reaching out for their wallets and making sure that, you weren't the sort of smart guy in the room that was trying to get free money. We developed relationships by understanding what their agenda was, really empathizing with, what do you want to achieve? And then over time, the same was reciprocated. And then when you build trust, it's much easier to kind of unlock those resources. It is easier, at the kind of the World Bank, Rockefeller Foundation level. You see these big announcements. Now, as you know, the European Union has announced also a big blended finance facility. And that's great news, but it is important that then that capital filters down to the right projects, and that's where the difficulty is.
No, look, I think your point about culture is so well taken. As the boss of UNDP, I struggled to get my colleagues to be willing to choose one business to get into bed with, to use the cronyism, extension of the cronyism thing. And they were saying, well, what about the other businesses? We're not getting into bed. They'll accuse us of deploying public money on a sort of crony basis. So, really kind of finding models which public officials are comfortable with and doesn't compromise them is much more difficult than you might think from outside. Let's